Well, everybody, we are at conference championship game weekend already. Time is flying by, and there were a few surprises along the way to get here, but it seems as though, for the most part, outside of the Detroit Lions, we have gotten what we expected. The 49ers are here, Patrick Mahomes is here, the Ravens are there, both they were a 1 seed, and the Lions are the really only surprise. So it should be a good weekend. I'm going to do what I did the last 2 weeks when I previewed the wild card round and the divisional round, go position by position group, see who has the advantage, and then give my prediction. By the way, I was dead on with my prediction with Kansas City versus the Bills. I was 4-0 last week after a rough first week, so I'm on a heater right now. So just sit back, relax, and enjoy. Or not. It's a free country. Start off with the NFC Championship game, 49ers versus Detroit, and we're looking at the quarterback advantage. I think this is interesting because I feel like Jared Goff right now is way more respected than he was when he was in St. Louis. Jared Goff has obviously already been to a Super Bowl. The last time he was in a conference championship game was the famous no-call defensive pass interference versus the Saints in 2018. But Jared Goff has gone through and is really, I think, one of the few quarterbacks who can relate to what Brock Purdy is going through now, where you put up good numbers, but people don't give you the credit. Now, Goff's in Detroit, and people say, oh, of course Jared Goff's a better quarterback than Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy's just a product of Kyle Shanahan, blah, blah, blah. I talked about this, how Shanahan is like the Coors Field effect in baseball, where you're a Colorado Rockies player, you have great batting average, but nobody cares because people think, oh, well, it's just because the ball travels farther in Coors Field. So that's what Shanahan is for Brock Purdy. But I'll keep saying it, though. Brock Purdy, he just keeps getting the job done, and I don't think he's as good as his numbers. I don't think he's the best quarterback of all time. I do think there seems to be this fraction of people that overrate him, but the guy is good, and I do think because he has better support than Goff does, and it's not like the Lions have a bad support, but the 49ers are absolutely loaded. And I think that's enough to give the quarterback advantage to the 49ers, just because I feel like Brock Purdy's life is going to be easier. And in a vacuum, I still don't trust Jared Goff, and this is just whatever. Maybe it's just me still being pissed off about the fact that he scored 3 points in the Super Bowl against Tom Brady, but I just can't help but feel like I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop with Jared Goff, where he finally has that stinker and ends the Lions season. So quarterback advantage goes to the 49ers. Running back advantage, this, in all the videos I've done previews so far, this was literally the closest one, because both these teams, this is literally the two best running teams in the league. They both have dominant ground games, both take pressure off their quarterbacks, they both have great running back. For me, the deal breaker was that the 49ers had Christian McCaffrey, who's probably the best running back in the league right now. So I ended up giving the 49ers the edge here, but both these teams are the best of the best when it comes to running the ball. So I expect them to be fairly even in this category, but 49ers have Christian McCaffrey, who's on path to be a Hall of Famer, and he's in his prime, and he also is really, really handsome. I don't know if that helped, but that's just something I had put out there. Wide receiver advantage. Again, most of the time, the Lions would probably get the edge here because Amon-Ra St. Brown's an all-pro. Laporta, tight end, is going to be a future superstar. But the 49ers, you got Brandon Ayuk, 1,300-yard receiver. You got George Kittle, who's probably the best tight end in the league right now. Deebo Samuel. They just have McCaffrey, obviously, out of the backfield as a receiving option, one of the best receiving backs ever. They just have everything, the 49ers. I think, for my money, the 49ers are the best team in the league, and they should win Super Bowl, spoiler. So I give them the edge here at receiver. But again, it's not as if the Lions are pushovers in this, but one team has to get the edge and one team doesn't, and push comes to shove, I go with the Niners here. Offensive line advantage, I'm going with Detroit. This is one where the 49ers might have the best individual offensive lineman in Trent Williams, but as we all know, an offensive line is more than just one person, and the Detroit Lions offensive line has graded out excellent. Sewell is a great player. He looks like he could be on track to be a Hall of Famer if he stays healthy. Ragnow is a great center. They just have, across the board, they've really helped Jared Goff get his career back on track, and they really have helped make Detroit one of the best running games in the league with Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. So this one goes pretty easily to Detroit. Defensively, the advantage to me goes to the 49ers. 49ers, even though I think they might have underachieved slightly given their star status in rankings, they are better than Detroit, and this is really why I think Detroit is not going to be able to beat the Niners, is because their defense is their weak spot. You get Detroit 26th in points per drive allowed in the regular season, 20th in yards allowed. Baker Mayfield and Matthew Stafford both put up pretty good numbers against them in their first two playoff games, so there's no reason to think the 49ers can't move the ball and put up a lot of points on them as well. So they were able to get away with it versus Mayfield and Stafford, but I do not see them being able to slow down the Niners offense. But hey, any given Sunday. Special teams, once again, I'm going with the Niners. Mitch Wishnowsky is arguably the best punter in the league. He was the second highest rated punter in terms of pinning teams inside their own 20-yard line. He was also top 10 in net yards per punt. Although Jack Fox, again for Detroit's punter, top 5 in pinning teams inside the 20-yard line. So you might expect a lot of long drives for each team in this game. May chew up some clock, who knows. I would give 49ers the edge overall, kicking wise, because Michael Badgley, thus far in the playoffs, he's been good, but he's missed a couple points since he took over as kicker. I think Jake Moody is the better kicker of the two. So I'm going to give the special teams edge to the Niners, although again, both these teams are really, really good special teams. These are both two really, really well-built teams. This is not an easy choice. And neither is trying to choose the coaching advantage, although to be fair, there are some similarities. This is Dan Campbell's third year in Detroit. After first 2 years, he had a losing record. Guess what? Kyle Shanahan took over for the 49ers 2017, first 2 seasons, losing records. Then in year 3, boom, 13-3, made it to the Super Bowl. Should have won the Super Bowl, really. They had a 10-point lead in the fourth quarter with the ball, and they blew it, but that's kind of what Kyle Shanahan, that's the biggest weakness with Kyle Shanahan, is his blowing leads in big games. But despite that, I'm still going to give the 49ers coaching advantage. You could say that right now, Kyle Shanahan is the best coach in the league, and I think it would be hypocritical to say, well, Brock Purdy's only a product of Kyle Shanahan, and then say, well, Kyle Shanahan isn't the better coach. I think Dan Campbell, for what it's worth, what he's done with Detroit to get them to a conference championship game is unbelievable. But I do think part of being coach and proving your worth as a coach is a track record. And we've seen plenty of teams, they have a run like this where they have a deep playoff run and then they're not able to maintain that. I'm not saying that's what Dan Campbell is, but this is the 4th time in 5 years the 49ers have made the conference championship game. So Kyle Shanahan is now establishing a track record. The only thing he doesn't have is a Super Bowl ring. And that's really the only thing that's preventing Shanahan from being talked about as one of the best coaches ever, because he's on track to be that. So he gets the edge. Schematically, he's a genius. Dan Campbell, not bad either, but he's more of a morale and less of an X's and O's guy. But I appreciate the fact that Campbell, he doesn't coach like a pussy. He does fake punts. He goes for it on 4th down. So I respect the hell out of Dan Campbell, and I respect his deltoids. Have you seen his shoulders? Jesus, if this was a fighting competition, Dan Campbell would easily beat the shit out of Kyle Shanahan. But unfortunately, that's not what football is in between coaches, although I wish it kind of was. But the coaching advantage goes to the 49ers. My overview of the game, I've said it several times. To me, the 49ers are the best team in the NFL. They were the best team in the NFL this year, outside of a couple of hiccups. They should win this game, and they should win it somewhat rather comfortably. I think they're going to be able to move the ball at will against the Lions defense. I think that the Lions offense will put up a good fight, but it won't be enough, and their magical season will end just like it did in 1991 in the same round, the NFC Championship game. I had the 49ers winning 38-24. And now we get to the AFC Championship game, the Kansas City Chiefs versus Baltimore. This is the one that I'm a lot more excited about just because there's a lot more legacy talk, and I could honestly make this a video for hours about Mahomes versus Brady, and everything Mahomes does, whether anybody likes it or not, it's going to be compared to Tom Brady, and I just think it's hilarious how insecure Brady fans are about Mahomes winning, and the fact that it's so obvious that Mahomes is better than Brady, at the very least through 7 seasons. If you compare their first 7 seasons or their first 6 years as a starter, it's so fucking obvious that Mahomes is on pace to just completely destroy Brady's numbers, especially in the postseason. But anyway, quarterback advantage, unsurprisingly, is going to go to Kansas City. Mahomes is the best quarterback in the league. He proved it again last week versus Buffalo. And again, there aren't many games where you take a guy like Lamar Jackson, who's going to win his 2nd MVP, and say, well, they don't have the advantage at that quarterback position. But Kansas City does have the advantage at the quarterback position. And that's really the biggest reason why they are still in the dance, once again, in their 6th straight conference championship game. First one on the road, though, in the Mahomes era. But as I said before, and as I'll say again, Mahomes in his career, statistically, whatever you want to call it, has been better on the road than he has been at home. Another quarterback who was like that, surprisingly, another former Chief quarterback, Joe Montana, had better road numbers in his career than home numbers. It's a very, very rare quality. But I would say that KC has the quarterback advantage, and I wouldn't even think twice about it. Running back advantage, big ups to the Ravens, and this obviously includes Lamar's ability to run as well. The Chiefs aren't a great running team. Pacheco, we all love him because he runs high knees and he runs angry, and it's funny to look at, but yeah, he's not enough to tip the scales or anything. Mahomes is capable of scrambling every now and then with his little fucking granny walk where he runs like he has shit in his pants, but this is obviously an edge to the Ravens. Wide receiver advantage, I'm going to give the edge to the Ravens as well. It's not that I think the Ravens receivers are dominant or anything, because they're not, but, and I went on this entire spiel last week, it's just the fact that if the Chiefs don't win the Super Bowl this year, And I'll say it again because it literally almost cost them last week with Mecole Hardman fumbling the ball on the goal line. Instead of putting the Chiefs up 10, it fumbled the ball out of the end zone for a touchback like a fucking idiot. It's shit like that. I just know at some point, and I just have this feeling at some point, it might not be in this game or it's in the Super Bowl, at some point in the next two games, if the Chiefs are able to win this game, that their receivers, there's going to be a drop or a fumble that fucks them in the ass for good, and they were able to get away with it last week, but at some point there's going to be something where their receivers fuck it up for Mahomes, because they've done it all year. They almost did it last week. I can't believe it. What Mecole Hardman did, and you can say Mahomes got lucky, and this is why Brady fans are like, oh, well, Mahomes got lucky with some stuff. I'm like, yeah, that's true. But guess what? Not one time in 381 fucking starts did one of Tom Brady's receivers fumble a ball, or any of his teammates rather, fumble a ball out of the opponent's end zone for a touchback. And this happened to Mahomes in a playoff game, a competitive playoff game, okay? So I just, this is more so about the Chiefs receivers being dog shit than it is about the Ravens receivers being great. But I give the Ravens the edge there. I will say, though, shout out to MVS for actually making some catches last week. Maybe playoff Marquez Valdez-Scantling. Maybe he is kind of Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. He sucks in the regular season, but he's on his game in the postseason. Who knows? I'm sure now that I complimented him, he's probably going to have like 3 drops, but whatever. Baltimore gets the receiver edge. Offensive line advantage. This is going to Baltimore easily. Dominant run game. And also because Joe Thuney, one of the premier Chiefs offensive linemen, is not going to play in this game. So that's a big loss for Kansas City. We've already seen the Chiefs lose out on a ring in the Mahomes era, largely due to their offensive line collapsing. So I remember going into Super Bowl 55, there was talks about, well, Eric Fisher was going to be out, and they had a bunch of injuries along the offensive line. And for me, I was like, who gives a shit? And it was all overlooked by everybody, and it ended up really deciding that Super Bowl. It wasn't Tom Brady throwing a ball 3 yards in the air on average. It wasn't, anything like, it was the fact that Mahomes was constantly under pressure and they couldn't block anybody. So I'm not going to underestimate a fractured and injured offensive line for the Chiefs in a big playoff game ever again. But the edge here goes to the Ravens. Defensively, this has been Kansas City's calling card all year long, and yet I'm going to give the advantage to the Ravens because the Ravens were literally the #1 defense this year in terms of points allowed per drive, and they held CJ Stroud to 3 points in the divisional round. So this Ravens defense is legit. I talked about it last week, how the Ravens have had a top 10 defense in points 19 out of 28 seasons they've been in existence. And it's ironic that one of the years they didn't was 2012 when they won the Super Bowl, Joe Flacco's famous run. But the Chiefs have an elite defense. The Ravens have probably the best defense. And the other reason we're giving Baltimore the edge here is because really Kansas City's defense was dog shit versus Buffalo. Fucking dog shit. They gave up 24 points. Very easily could have been over 30. Obviously, Tyler Bass missed the chip shot field goal. Not a chip shot, but he missed the field goal wide right at the end. That would have been another 3 points. The Bills receivers dropped a couple passes that should have been bombs, so the Bills very easily could have had 30 plus points on the Chiefs. The Chiefs defense was not good at all versus the Bills. And every time the Chiefs have played Baltimore in the past, Lamar has had some success. The last time these two teams played was in the mid to high 30s. Lamar fucking torched them. Now again, that was a couple years ago. Things changed, but the player's still the same. I would give the Ravens the edge defensively. Special teams, if there was one kicker that I would really take over Harrison Butker, it would be Justin Tucker. And what team does Justin Tucker happen to play for? Well, God damn it, he happens to play for the Baltimore Ravens, who the Chiefs are playing this week. Isn't that something? But overall, I would think that Justin Tucker might be the best kicker in the league, but Harrison Butker is also one of the best. So it's pretty much a push when it comes to field goal kicking. This is really going to be decided by the punting, and Jordan Stout from Baltimore is top 8 in the league in pinning teams inside their own 20-yard line. Tommy Townsend only 23rd out of 33, so not very good. Although Townsend does have a higher average net yards per attempt, but to me, I think the more important number is how often and how good is a kicker at pinning their opponents deep, because that's the entire fucking point of punting, is to force your opponent to go on a long drive, flip field position. So I would say that the Ravens get the edge. For special teams, the coaching advantage, we have a matchup here between two Super Bowl winning head coaches. Andy Reid obviously has 2. John Harbaugh won one all the way back in 2012. This is the Ravens' first AFC Championship game since 2012. This is the first time they've ever hosted the AFC Championship game. This is Andy Reid's 11th conference championship game as a head coach. He's 4-6. Shout out to LeBron. Andy Reid. But he is 3-2 in conference championship games with Mahomes as his quarterback. And it would be 4-1 if not for that fucking bitch D Ford. God damn it. D Ford always, all these years later, still finds a way to piss me off. Anyway, I would have to give the coaching advantage to Andy Reid. But I gotta admit, I'm a little bit not as confident in that as I should be because Andy Reid this season, for whatever reason, it seems to be a little bit too obsessed with the trick plays. More often, I know in the past, everyone thought it was cute, all these trick plays and shit. I think Andy Reid's kind of fallen in love a little bit too much with that, especially in the red zone. It's kind of like, hey, you got Patrick Mahomes as your quarterback, just let him do his thing. But overall, I still think Andy Reid is arguably the best head coach in the league right now, so he gets the edge. But John Harbaugh, again, another elite coach. So this game overall, as you would expect for a conference championship game, both these teams have a lot of good things going for them, but the coaching edge to me goes to Andy Reid and the Chiefs. My overview, man, this is tough because Baltimore is the better team. There's no question about that. They have the better team. They're the more complete team, but Kansas City has the best player. Kansas City has the main character. Patrick Mahomes is the main fucking character. I think Kansas City is going to squeak out another win. I think they win 35-31. Mahomes leads a game-winning touchdown drive to break Baltimore's hearts and send Kansas City back to the Super Bowl for a rematch with the 49ers, a rematch of Super Bowl 54.